A Civil War museum in Texas will be closing its doors in December. Now, what makes this museum unique, it's in Fort Worth, is it was trying to give an even-hand approach to the Civil War, and it has a collection of artifacts worth between 20 to 25 million. And I've got a piece here at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and this piece is just dripping with bias. Story by Bud Kennedy. It's an opinion piece. It says here, Texas Civil War Museum near Fort Worth is closing. It tried to be fair, but it failed. Well, did this museum really fail? I think the problem with a lot of these museums is usually they can't get enough funding. They don't know how to really advertise. People don't know a lot about these museums, except maybe word of mouth. So it says here, the Texas Civil War Museum, meant as a non-political exhibit on the South's failed rebellion. Well, Mr. Kennedy, this wasn't a rebellion. This was secession. These states voted to secede in their state legislature. Then they seceded, then joined the CSA. So it wasn't a rebellion, it wasn't sedition, insurrection, it was secession. But inevitably, tainted as a whitewashed attraction that overlooked black history and the horror of slavery, the museum will be closing December 30th, it is announced on Facebook. Well, I don't think this museum is trying to whitewash anything, because you admit the title here that the museum was trying to be fair by presenting both sides of the issue. Artifacts from the Confederate side, artifacts from the Union side. The museum's Confederate and Union military artifacts, valued at $3 million when the $1.5 million building opened in 2004, are now worth $20 million to $25 million, and, quote, may be the biggest private collection ever put on the market, said the owner of a Pennsylvania auction house. Museum director Marcus Ritchie confirmed the closing, originally announced February 20th on Facebook, as I mentioned. And in 2004, founders Judy and Ray Ritchie set the goal of presenting an even-handed approach to the Civil War, hiring a National Park Service historian and scholars on the North and South, and they arranged the museum so antiques from the Union and Confederacy were split down the middle. So here you admit that that's what they were trying to do, bring an even-handed approach to this conflict, while claiming that somehow this museum is being biased. Well, it's a very well-done museum, just remarkable, said Sam Small, who was already selling photos from the collection through the Horse Soldier, a military antiques dealer in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Quote, I don't know that anyone's ever seen a collection like this. But over time, the Ritchie's noble goal of a neutral soldier story told from, quote-unquote, both sides, produced a military antique collection short on Black American history and eventually showing an overly romanticized nostalgia for the South. Now, what's funny about this is later in the article, he admits that they have a collection of these artifacts of these black regiments that fought for the Union. But somehow they're trying to gloss over Black American history, slavery. Mr. Kennedy, should we close down the remnants of Auschwitz? Because you can go to Poland today, and you can visit the remnants of Auschwitz. By having the remnants of Auschwitz open, are we somehow romanticizing or having a nostalgia for what happened with the Third Reich during World War II? An introductory video, quote, Our Honor, Our Rights, taught school children a monochromatic view of Confederate President Davis's foolish lost cause, if I can get the words out, will be okay today, and ignored the reason behind the war over, quote-unquote, states' rights. And this is in parentheses, the states' right Texas and the South defended was the right to own slaves. Was that really true? Yes, slavery was being debated. But let's go to the actual documents themselves, the secession documents of both Texas and South Carolina. We're going to start with Texas because Texas's secession document is often overlooked in comparison to South Carolina. Everyone quotes the reason for the war being slavery because of South Carolina's secession document. But this is what Texas's secession document says. Texas abandoned her separate national existence and consented to become one of the Confederate states to promote her welfare. Or rather, Confederated States. Now, what they're talking about here is the United States, not the Confederate States of America, but the United States, because in 1860, 1861, these states still saw themselves as sovereign and independent. So you had this power play between the federal government. We've always had this power play between the federal government and states. How much power should the central authority have? How much power should the states have? It was always understood that the states have the ultimate power, because that's where the people live, and this is a government for the people, by the people, elected by the people. But Texas joined the Confederated States, the United States, to promote her welfare, ensure domestic tranquility, and secure more substantially the blessings of peace and liberty for her people. She was received into the Confederacy, once again referring to the United States, with her own constitution, under the guarantee of the federal constitution and the compact of annexation, that she should enjoy these blessings. She was received as a commonwealth holding, maintaining, and protecting the institution known as Negro slavery. And this is their wording here. Keep in mind, this is the writing of the time. The servitude of the African to the white race within her limits, a relation that had existed from the first settlement of her wilderness by the white race, in which her people intended should exist in all future time. See, right there, it's all about slavery. It's all about slavery. That's all the South wanted to do. Well, hold on here. Because if you go down further into the secession document, they talk about some other grievances here. And these weren't small issues either. It says here, the federal government, while but partially under the control of these, are unnatural and sectional enemies, has for years almost entirely failed to protect the lives and property of the people of Texas against the Indian savages on our border. At that time, they were having an issue with these violent Indian tribes that were attacking not only other tribes, but settlers, plantation owners. So this was a real issue. And more recently, against the murderous forays of the banditti. Now, the banditti were a group of outlaws that were coming up from Mexico, terrorizing plantation owners, slave owners, settlers. And they had asked several times for the U.S. government to do something about this, but the U.S. government did not do anything to stop this. And when our state government has expended large amounts for such purpose, the federal government has refused reimbursement therefore, thus rendering our condition more insecure and harassing than it was during the existence of the Republic of Texas. See, right here, they had more issues going on than just slavery. But let's get back to the article, then I'll get into South Carolina's secession document, because a lot of people don't know that in 1852, South Carolina was planning to secede, but did not do so on advice of the other slave-holding states. And that was because of the Wilmot Proviso, which led to the Compromise of 1850. Now, the Wilmot Proviso came about because of the Mexican-American War. So, Mr. Kennedy, as I proved in here, it was more than just slavery that they were dealing with in 1860, 1861. At one point, the museum's gift shop devolved into a toxic Confederate battle flag trinket stand. A toxic Confederate battle flag trinket stand. I'm trying to do this in one take. I got to get ready for work here, so thanks for bearing with me. Well, Mr. Kennedy, the history of the Confederate battle flag is twofold. The X on the flag is known as St. Andrew's Cross. It goes back to Scotland. It was a symbol used against the British, against tyranny. In 1860, 1861, also had to deal with maritime history or naval history. And they chose this design as not to offend the Jewish population of the time in 1860, 1861, because they had a large Jewish population in the South. Also, the first star of the Confederate battle flag goes back to 1810, with a flag known as the Bonnie Blue. That flag was first raised when settlers at what was to become the Republic of West Florida declared independence from Spain, because Spain at the time was controlling the waterways. We have this land area that was kind of a gray area, so to speak, between the United States, Spain, and settlers time and time again had asked the U.S. government to help them ward off the Spanish. Well, the United States did not want to get into a war with Spain. So these settlers declared independence from Spanish rule, called themselves a Republic of West Florida, which may have very well become the state of Florida. It's now what we know as Baton Rouge, modern-day Baton Rouge. A museum volunteer also became swept up in promoting the seditious Texas campaign for a new secession and rebellion against the United States of America. Mr. Kennedy, secession is not rebellion. This Texas movement is not seditious. The most American thing you can do is secede. It's what we did in 1776. We told Great Britain, we don't need you anymore. The King's violating our rights as British citizens, as colonies. We are now going to declare ourselves as independent and sovereign states. Yet the museum also presented a reputable collection of war antiques, uniforms, guns, even cannons, equally divided between the U.S. and the renegade Confederacy. It also featured artifacts from the U.S. Army's all-black Buffalo Soldier units, so here you admit that they're showing black history while claiming that this museum is being biased, and they're not talking about black history or slavery. And period dresses from the United Daughters of the Confederacy Lineage Society. It's kind of a lengthy article, so for the sake of time, I'm just going to go over here to the secession document of South Carolina. Opening paragraph. People of the state of South Carolina in convention assembled on the 26th day of April, 1852, declared that the frequent violations of the Constitution of the United States by the federal government and its encroachments upon the reserved rights of the states fully justified this state in then withdrawing from the federal union. But in deference to the opinions and wishes of the other slaveholding states, she forbore at that time to exercise this right. Since that time, these encroachments have continued to increase, and further forbearance ceases to be a virtue. Now the state of South Carolina, having resumed her separate and equal place among nations, deems it due to herself, to the remaining United States of America, and to the nations of the world, that she should declare the immediate causes, they don't say cause here, they say causes, plural, which have led to this act. And in the very next paragraph, they refer to the Declaration of Independence, what happened in 1776. That states, these colonies which would become states, are free and independent, and they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do other acts and things which independent states may of right do. So, Mr. Kennedy, obviously there had to be more things going on in 1860, 1861 than slavery. And I really would like to see this museum stay open. It's a part of American history. One of the things we do on this channel, preservation of history, culture, celebration of great art, music. Those things are important. Because if you have no record of history, of the past, then you're bound to make the same mistakes that our ancestors made. You have no foundation to move forward in the future. So I thought I'd share this with you today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. You can also follow me at Instagram, #JasonComposes, because I write music in my spare time. Or you can find me at Twitter, Cultural Confederacy at Twitter. It's actually Cultural Confederacy at Cultural Confed 1 at Twitter. But this is the Cultural Confederacy saying peace out. Stay safe, everybody. God bless this thing called the United States. And you know how we do it here. This is where the past crashes with the present. Thanks for bearing with me. One take video. I'll catch you next time.